now. Go.
Yeah. So, if I were to capture Daniel, I think one of the best ways to say it is he was someone who loved behind the scenes. So, here's a good example that would characterize Daniel. Someone would show up as a foreign exchange student, and as a foreign exchange student, they would arrive in Tremont, and Tremont's tiny, and so he would make it his personal mission. I want this person to have the best country experience ever. I want them to shoot guns and blow things up, and I want them to be safe in the process. I want them to eat dead squirrel. He was always about like, how can we enhance this experience? And he could pull in anybody. He was so welcoming to get people together to enjoy and experience life together. But I picture him almost like somebody who's a coordinator who would draw all these people in, and then he would sit maybe in the back of the room. He would sit and he would just he would take it all in and get such great joy from other people finding joy.
So he really kind of shunned being out front.
Oh, spotlight? No thanks. That was not him. No, he did not want the spotlight.
He didn't.
No.
I was looking at his photo, and he looks so young. But yet, from what I've heard, he seems so grown up.
Yeah, I think probably that's a great observation. I think one of the interesting things that I would say about him being growing up is you hear this phrase sometimes, oh, that kid's got an old soul. That's kind of Daniel. There was some relational maturity to him where he wasn't big with drama. You could look at high school kids and think how they would get caught up in just the drama of being a teen. That wasn't him, really. And I think some things that were really encouraging to watch were just how he would handle drama. It would come to him and he would just kind of diffuse it. And like an old soul, he'd be able to talk through things a little bit more level-headed than others would.
How? I mean, as someone who was once his age,
yeah,
that's sort of hard. I mean,
I think probably a few things, probably two things primarily. One, I think his faith in Jesus gave him the ability to overcome many of the common obstacles that someone would experience at that age. The other thing that I would say was huge. His parents are awesome. His parents are level-headed, Jesus-fearing, loving people who they were always considering and concerned about their kids' welfare, like all parents are. But I think when you mix it with this concern that they have an understanding that all decisions and all interactions with their kid run through this grid of how has Jesus lived my life and died my death and given me a new life. That's how they would teach their kids.
Is that really how he led his life? I mean, from what I've heard from his friends, that the church was really first and foremost, and everything else sprang from that. Is that true?
It really is. He, I think one of the ways to look at Daniel that's helpful is he lived authentically, which means he wrestled with things. I can remember having conversations with his mom coming in my office and saying, "Oh, he's so disrespectful. I wish he would just wake up and be nice to us. He's nice to other people." And isn't every teen like that to some degree? But the thing was, Daniel didn't hide it. I would have conversations then with him after youth group and be like, "Hey, how's this week?" Okay, well, let's talk about it. And he would talk about the wrestling of those things. And when I would say, "Look, man, I see how you're talking about your parents or something. Do you think that's really a picture of how Christ is?" "Oh, well, nope." Just a real laid back answer. But he was thinking about those things deeply. And so he would never arrive somewhere without authentically getting there. He wouldn't fake it to make it. That was not him. So he's very authentic.
He joined the Corps, and he was a very bright kid. In other words, coming out of a small town, he did have options here. Why do you think that he chose to join?
Well, it's been said before, and I'd say it again, that if there's a path of least resistance, that's not the place that he's headed. If the phrase that I think of is, if something's worth having, then it's worth working for. That was his mindset. He was not just going to be somebody who was going to cut a corner to get a cheap thrill or an easy out. And I think it shows, even giving the greatest sacrifice for his country. Here's someone who, you know what, I could have done 1,000 other things, probably even more affluent, great offerings in life. But I don't want that. And that was kind of how he lived his life.
But why the service?
I don't know if I can answer that entirely. I think maybe his parents could probably answer that a little bit better. I think part of Daneil's, I want to pull everybody in and just experience joy of watching other people get joy, kind of translates a little bit to the military. You know, I'm going to give my life and in service and sacrifice to this country so that there's a greater body of people, maybe something larger than himself that he could contribute to that would bring him great joy. Kind of makes sense to me. But I don't know that I could give a great answer to that.
What is the one thing, you know, there's going to be people who watch this, who read the story, who say, yeah, you know, I've heard this, but what is the one thing that people need to know? What is the one thing at the end of this weekend that we should take from all of this?
I think if you boil everything down, I think Daneil understood that he was created in the image of God, and that as a result of being born into this world, he's someone who, by nature, is a sinner. And he understood that Jesus Christ took his sins on the cross, and Daneil believed in faith in that. And it came by hard. Like, it was not an easy decision for him. His parents would tell you that. His friends would tell you that. But I think more than anything, even if Daneil were here and you say, what's the point of your life? What's the one thing you live for? I live for Jesus Christ and him alone. And that's going to color everything else. That's going to color how I serve as a Marine. That's going to color how I listen and honor and love my parents. It's going to color how I handle my sister and who she is and how we relate back and forth. And that's going to be the mark of my friendships. The mark of my friendships is going to be sacrifice and love and grace and forgiveness. He may not articulate it in relational terms like that, but he was very intelligent, and he had an intelligent faith, and he came by it hard. He worked for it in terms of understanding, I'm not just going to take someone else's word for it. I'm going to apply the truth of what's being taught, and I'm going to apply it with my life and live it out in community.